Welcome to Witches of Workshop, a writing community podcast. I'm Lauren.
I'm Caroline, and this is where we brew better stories together. So if you want to be critiqued on the podcast, just send 1 to 10 pages and a synopsis to witchesofworkshop@gmail.com. Without further ado, let's get started.
Before we get into our lovely guests, we got to talk about what's brewing in our life cauldrons and our writing cauldrons.
What's up with you, Caroline?
Well, one of mine is the same as yours because we did it together, and that is seeing Wuthering Heights in quotation marks. I'm like, do we dare to give our honest rating when this movie is so polarizing?
Yes, we absolutely dare.
Okay, I still say like 3 to 3.5 out of 5 stars for me.
I rated on Letterboxd 3 stars and
Yeah.
like a 3 stars and a heart. Like
Because you liked it.
enjoyed it. I was really, really poised to hate it. I don't like Wuthering Heights. I've never liked it.
Same. Why am I kind of surprised you don't like Wuthering Heights? It's so angsty, and I feel like you kind of love a little bit of that.
I do, but I think it's just because they're both so mean. Like they're both so horrible. And I've never understood the draw to like him because I'm like, ew,
I know. He's kind of
he's
scary.
not- he is so, and she's just like, and I think Margot Robbie was chef's
I think
kiss.
as far as the acting goes, like obviously there's some casting questionableness, but the actors they did cast did very well, I thought, for their roles. I was so excited when the young Heathcliff popped on screen and it was the boy from Adolescence because he's so fabulous. The little girl was so fabulous.
Yeah.
So the people they did cast, I thought did 10 out of 10.
You know, one day we could go into a deep dive on Emerald Fennell and my thoughts on her.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know.
There's so much to say.
There's a lot to say. And then the casting thing, I'm like, it's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It was a
It's
choice. But also, like, I'm not going to dog him because he did do a great job. He was very, and he did give me a little, like, give me, like, the Romani, like, if you think, like, Peaky Blinders, like, he gave me those vibes very well. Plus the earring and the tooth, I was like,
here for it. We were surprisingly here for it. Highly recommend going to see with the group of girls in a mostly, if not completely empty theater so that you can make some commentary on
just
the side.
giggles. The giggles were just,
giggles were giggling. That was kind of our Galentines. What are your other fun life updates besides Wuthering Heights?
After 7 years and maybe 2 years of a real struggle, I finally got a new computer. That was my Valentine's Day present to myself. So you are seeing me live in HD, and it's also fancy. My battery is still just killing
she's still
it.
Going. Yeah, we've been really living on a hope and a prayer with every podcast recording.
Because she lasted.
So this is an exciting development, not just for you, but for the podcast.
Yeah, and my keys all stick to my fingers because they're all broken. So like now it's like I could just type and like the humidity level outside doesn't indicate whether or not all
it's
of my
got nothing
keys
on you. You're going to get so many more words out now because you don't have to pause to like put that key back. It's incredible. I'm so happy for you. Well deserved. Well deserved.
It's
okay.
good.
Well,
it's a good choice.
Speaking of words, it seems like there's a theme to our writing updates this week, which is sing it with me. Rejection.
La 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 la.
We've both been getting rejected. Yes. How much detail would you like to go into about yours?
I'll just say I had an editor who liked the book and I think maybe wanted it, but the team rejected. So that was like it was nice to like, she wrote a very lovely letter.
There was so much about it she did love.
And so that was like, but then, you're like, well, great, but also rejection.
It's hard to feel so close to something that you can taste it and then be like, and that's why not? Okay.
But it also just proves like the whole subjective nature. Like it is, it's such a fine line. And so like, I don't know, there's part of me that finds a little bit of hope in it that it's like, it's not, you're like, when you're getting these rejections, it's not necessarily anything to do with your writing or your story. It is literally just like, I don't love that plot point. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
Onwards and upwards.
we're gonna just keep writing.
Should we do a little intro for our guest we are so excited for? And this is our
Oh my
first
god.
virtual guest joining us because she's joining us all the way from Washington, the most magical
Mhm.
place, one of the most magical places on earth.
She and the Cullens are gonna be hanging out. So
Absolutely.
I love this person so very much. She is the reason that I joined workshop. So we love her. So we'll give you our little intro. So our next Witches of Workshop guest is like legitimately the reason that I am still writing today. So when we say that like she is one of the most gracious and encouraging authors that we've ever met, like we mean it. Like I mean it with my full soul. She is just the best.
Leslie is the author of Fractured Tide, which won the JLG Gold Standard selection, and Sweetest Darkness, one of my personal favorite young adult books. The cover is just chef's kiss. And about Sweetest Darkness, the R.L. Stein said it was, quote, so scary it gives darkness a bad name. So that tells you everything about the vibes that she brings. She is also, which we will get into, one of the best critiquers I've ever heard, which is why I so have missed her since she moved from Texas back to Seattle for very good reasons. But we miss having her on a Wednesday. It's always such a treat whenever we get to swap material with her and hear her thoughts. Her prose is just out of this world. Like every sentence is like a song. I don't
So
know.
beautiful.
So we can't wait to get into it with the one and only Leslie Lutz.
Well, this is just a conversation amongst friends.
Yeah, I've totally
So
relaxed.
this is just we're just talking with the Leslie Lutz. So we're gonna
The
get
one
right
and
into it. We're gonna talk about some good stuff. We're gonna talk about workshopping. We're gonna talk about a little about your history with workshop, but just with writing. And so we're just going to start off with the basic. We got to know the basics. Did you always know you wanted to be a writer? You obviously studied English and literature, and that was like the path you took in the collegiate on your collegiate journey. But like, did you know that writing was going to be your thing?
I got a pretty good sense of it when I was 12 and I was writing poetry in my diary. And then I found I really liked it. But I was toggling between trying to be I wanted to be a marine biologist at some point until I was in college and realized, you know what, you're really not that good at math and chemistry. Maybe this is not the best fit. But what I was still looking around trying to figure out what I wanted, and I took a volunteer position at the Daily Texan, which is the school newspaper for UT. And I just remember being in that office, and I had been given an assignment to write like a movie review, and being so happy in that, that zone you go into when everything else falls away except for your writing, and it feels very intense and almost meditative. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking at that moment, like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So college was when it really did hit home that this was something that was important to me.
So were you studying English already, or did you change your path when you rediscovered your love for writing? Like, what led you to getting the master's?
You know how they force you to pick a major eventually? They're like,
Yeah.
just do it. And then I like, well, this is the only thing I seem to like. But then after I graduated, I took a job out in the world in really boring marketing jobs that I did not enjoy. And that's when I realized like this is not how I want to use my writing talents. I just didn't enjoy writing newsletters for the State Board of Medical Examiners. It was just like, so I went back to get my master's after 5 years, and then I really loved that. And then I was working on this novel for like, I must have worked on it for 10 years, and it was a literary fiction novel, but I didn't know yet how to manage my daily writing tasks and how to manage the revision process. Like that's something they just didn't teach. Everything they
Right.
seemed to teach at the time was about like, oh, how do you deepen your character? It was all craft, no habit. So I don't know. I really don't think that getting an English degree or a master's in English helps as much as people think it does. I think that you learn most of your writing craft outside of college. That's my feeling. But then I have never had an MFA, and I do see a lot of success come out of MFA programs. So.
Well, we've talked about this a lot, and you kind of just mentioned it in our personal conversation, but you started writing literary fiction, but you found success when you switched to YA horror. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to find your genre and
Yeah.
why you think so many authors start out writing literary?
So when I was getting my master's, it was an MA, not an MFA. And your professors are all telling you what to like. And not only that, but they also have a tendency to kind of subtly diss genre fiction or not so subtly. Like, people who like romance novels, people who like, just regular mystery novels. Well, they're not very smart. Like they have this way of making you feel bad about the things that you secretly liked. You wouldn't even admit it anymore. Like, I'm not going to tell them that I was reading a romance novel last night. Oh my God. And so they're telling you this is the top, this is the pinnacle. And the thing is,
Mhm.
you want to write something that you enjoy reading the most. I believe that's the case. Like if you love whatever form the story is coming to you that you feel like telling, that's the way you're supposed to tell it. And if you are trying to force yourself into a mode that isn't really you, you're just sound like a poser, and it will come out in your writing that you aren't quite being authentic about what you like. And say and your eating habits are when you're really tired and you just want to read a comfort read, I feel like that's sort of a really good indication of what kind of writing you want to do. And I do enjoy literary fiction. I do, but it's just like I don't enjoy it as much as I
Mhm.
wouldn't say they're my favorite books. Um, so once I realized it's really important to be honest with yourself about who you are and to own it. Then I started writing, and I had written 3 manuscripts. So the first manuscript was literary, and then the second and third were genre, YA horror. Or actually, no, first one was like YA adventure and then YA horror. So I was in the right path, but I was still trying to think, what do people want? What do people want to read? I want to be that person. And then finally, after 3 manuscripts and all those years, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to write exactly what I want. I'm going to have a great time. Yes, crazy sea monster. I'm putting it in there. I'm going to write it as a letter to her father. People tell me not to, but I like it. Just enjoy it and be authentic about it. And the book came out much better
Mhm.
because I was writing something I really liked.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. The first thing I started writing at workshop was a fantasy that you both heard a little bit of, and I had a light bulb moment, like, finishing that and figuring out what to write next, and I was like, "Girl, you don't even read that much fantasy." Like, I don't know why but it was because of what you said. Like, for some reason, there's something in my brain that was like, "Well, I need to create my own world, and it needs to be fantasy, and it needs to be serious, it needs to be fun." But what I like to read is book club fiction. Like, call me a basic girl, but I love Leanne Moriarty, Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was like, that's what I love to read, and so I experienced the same thing.
I
Couldn't agree
think
more.
I read so many classics growing up, and then, like, I was such a John Green girl, and I was, like, reading all of these that I was just like, "I'm not smart enough to write." That's what I thought. I was like,
Um,
"I'm not smart enough to write." Like, I would read this brilliant literary book, and I'd be like, "Nope, I'm not smart enough to do this. I'll never be able to do this." And it's like, "Oh, wait a second. No, that's not how it needs to be." Like, the books that
Mm-mm.
you fly through are not literary, they're romance. Why
mhm.
why is that? So it's like, yeah, there's a self-discovery in it that maybe everybody has to find. Like, God bless the people who can just be like, "I know that I'm supposed to write this and it's right." But I feel like there's a path that has to be
It's like
taken.
once you start, like, to Leslie's point, stop trying to prove something to other people and
Yeah.
you're only doing it because of what you like. Also, I have a silly genre question because we talk about genres a lot and what they actually are. In your educated opinion, since you have a master's in this, what constitutes literary fiction?
Ooh.
So, literary fiction, in my view, is it's so the story is told in a way that pays special attention to language, so that it's either where the story is important, but language, the treatment of the sentence, is it going to be Hemingway-esque and you've got these short, spare sentences, or is it going to be Faulkner-esque? Also, then now we have this wonderful mix of literary slash genre where it's this wonderful sweet spot between the two, where you get things like Chain Gang All Stars, which I don't know if you've read yet, but is it's
Mm-mm.
an incredible book about a futuristic, not so future world in which the United States is using prisoners as combatants in a gladiatorial
Oh,
event.
yes. I've seen the
Yeah.
cover of this. It's the yellow book.
Oh, it's like got
Am
a
I thinking the right
scythe
thing?
or something on the top. It's an
Yes,
incredible
yes.
book. The storyline feels very genre. And the treatment of it when you read it feels very literary. So it's a kind of a wonderful mix of the two. And it's because of the way the author just the style of every paragraph and the kind of choices the author makes about language. So that's what I think. I think there can be such a so and so like literary structure. There are some weird structures that don't follow your traditional patterns, and that makes it literary. But then those are also going to have some kind of weird language treatment.
See, that's like Margot's Got Money Troubles. That's where I freaking love that book because Leslie, have you read that?
No.
So she
So
changes from
weird.
it's so weird. She talks very like meta about the process of like starting a new book and the beginning of the book, but she also switches from third to first person sometimes. And a lot of the times it's when like she needs to internalize something, it'll switch. And so, I mean, the story in and of itself feels very upmarket, very book club, but then you get this like weird literary treatment to it where you're like, oh, she's doing something weird with language. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see it in the
Interesting.
mystery space too. Sometimes mystery and thrillers will have somebody who will be throwing in like S.A. Cosby and, Razor Blade Tears and some of the other John McMahon who wrote like head cases. You're reading it and you think this whole chapter feels literary, and I'm right in the middle of a traditional structured mystery novel. But there's something about like the meeting of those two things. And I do try to do that I don't know if I say I try to do it. It's like as I'm writing, I'm thinking it'd be so cool if we did this with the imagery. And it sometimes sounds a little literary. And then sometimes my beta readers are like, okay, we got to cut like half of this description of these trees because it's a little too much. We need to get to the monster. So it's a balance.
Yeah, you definitely have a literary voice, in my humble opinion, which I enjoy and I love. Okay, I want to know workshop. Like, tell us about why you sought this out or how you stumbled upon it, and then how it changed your writing journey, because you were very involved for many years until you sadly and happily had to move.
Yeah, I had been writing that literary fiction novel forever and not knowing how to go about it. I was doing it alone. Because grad school's over, I had started it in grad school. I spent a lot of time revising because revising is easier than writing something new.
Oh,
So,
tell them.
yes, it totally is. So you can feel like you're doing something, but really you're not. It's an illusion. So then I was thinking about this idea of like, I was thinking about like, do I really want to be? So I started this new novel, which was a spy novel. And then I also realized that all the queries I had done on the novel that was finished, I had gotten about 55 rejections from agents. And I thought at the time that I could just follow the rules, read all the books on how to do things, just like I did in school, right? You read the books, you follow the lesson plan, you get an A. Wow, that's amazing. Success. So I figured writing's the same way. And it wasn't working. I plateaued. I couldn't get any better, and I couldn't figure out what was not working. And I didn't have beta readers who were telling me the honest truth. Because when you read your own work, you just don't see it clearly. So I was looking around. I went to the DFW Writers Workshop, the conference first. And then I learned about the workshop from there. And I just thought, well, I got to jumpstart something. I don't like what is going on. I'm never going to do this dream of mine if I don't figure out how to take the next step, because it's not in a book. And then the why I stayed is because I found the critique, spending 2 hours with this group of people and listening to the things that matter in stories, absolutely changed my perspective on revising. I was able to look at a chapter and go, you know what? This chapter's not working. I can cut it. And so then I would stop revising this thing that didn't work and write a new one. And some of the advice I would get just redirected the way I would approach a scene. And redirected and made me understand what I was afraid to write and where I was spending time where I shouldn't have been.
Workshop.
How about you guys? What was like the most like what helped you when you started going to workshop that
I mean, it's what you're saying. It was like a very clear picture back at like this wasn't I don't know. Maybe I expected it to be mean or feel harsh or feel sad. And once I got used to that, it was like that toughened skin. You're like, no, everybody here genuinely wants my story to be better. So it was just like, I don't know. It was just like a very clear sounding board of like, okay, like I don't know. It was a collaborative. It felt like a collaborative experience, but also like hearing people give advice to even other people. It was like, oh, I
Yeah.
do that. And so it was just so much knowledge, and it was like a fire hose of it too, because it's so much at once, but it works quickly if you're receptive to the information because you're like, "Oh, okay. I just saw that person make a mistake, that person make a mistake. I made this mistake." And so when you go to write that next chapter, you're thinking about all of those things and not in a prohibitive way, but in kind of a freeing way to be like, "Oh, okay. I know how to fix this now because I've heard this great advice and that great advice." So it just
Mm-hmm.
was like kind of addicting to be, I don't know, maybe we're
Yeah.
nerds addicted to knowledge.
Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking, it made me think about so one thing, I had this professor in grad school who taught romantic poetry. He wasn't teaching us how to write it. He just was an amazing guy, just teaching this romantic poetry era. And he said, "All right, everybody, what is the most important thing a writer must do?" And we all started raising our hands like dutiful students. And it's like, we have to express our ideas clearly. And then you have to do this. And he's like, nope, 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 nope. All of us were getting it wrong. And he says, none of you get it. Your number one job as a writer is to be interesting. If you're not interesting, it
Mm.
doesn't matter how good the sentence is. It doesn't matter how well written it is. Is it interesting? And it really stuck with me because I remember a critique when the first critique I did when I was at workshop for the first time reading out loud and my heart was about to jump out of my chest out of fear that everybody was going to laugh at me. And I got some very positive comments about the beginning of my piece. And then I remember Alex was in my room the first time, Ailey Martinez. And he said, okay, so this is great. This voice is good. And then he says, and here's the point where I got bored. And he told me where it was and why. No one had ever done that for me before. No one had ever said, this part is not interesting. Nobody had ever done that. And I'm like, that is incredibly helpful. It's because beta readers who are afraid to hurt your feelings are not helping you. And there's a way to do it. Like the way he did it is like very clinically, like, as a reader, I was bored here. So, cut that part.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
That's why a piece of critiquing in workshop that I've gotten more comfortable saying that I wasn't for a while is, here's where I zoned out. Because for a long time, I would think, well, if I zoned out while someone was reading, it was probably my fault. And on an occasion, maybe it is because you're just like tired or grumpy.
Yeah.
But then it's like, when a read is so interesting, it's impossible to zone out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's the feedback that I really appreciate receiving or will tell people is, here's where I zoned out. And sometimes I'm like, I couldn't tell you why, but you should go look back at that part where it
Yeah.
lost my interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. That is so helpful.
And I found that one thing I was doing was it is easier. It was safer for me to describe places and setting than it was to describe emotions. Because when you describe emotions, there's more opportunity for you to look ridiculous as a writer. Or because I do slip into, I like melodrama. I just really do. I watch
You're
a lot
very
of
good at it.
I like it. But sometimes when if there's something that's too melodramatic, and if it's melodramatic and also like shallow characterization, it can come off as silly. And sometimes in an early draft, it ends up that way because you're trying something out. And so instead of taking those chances and writing the emotion, I would just write about the setting. And I would, oh, look how beautiful the sunset is and the trees. And people are like, they're just so bored. Like, what does the main character want? We don't know. How does she feel? Like, I don't know.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the critiquing. Do you remember the best critique you've ever received that like made you like float on clouds and you were like, I'm figuring this out?
Yes, and it was a really weird one. And it wasn't just not weird as in her giving me critique wasn't weird, but it was the context of it. And that was as the second read I did, which was not as well received as the first read I did. Like my first read went really well, and the second read felt super flat, like a lead balloon. And people were kind of ripping me up a bit, and it was painful. And then Brooke Fossey was in the room, and she finally said, "You know what I think? I think you just need to think about motivation." And then she stopped and just like go back and look at that. And it was like seriously 2 sentences, but in the context of everything else, I was overwhelmed with the negative criticism. Right? There was so much coming at me. I didn't even know what Like, what's the spine of what I need to change? And goal and motivation and conflict, like those three things are what guide you through a revision, I think. If the reader doesn't know what your character wants and why, then everything kind of falls apart. And that's something I never focused on deliberately. It just sort of sometimes happened. I would stumble into writing motivation and, and goals. Well, because I was so focused on mood. I was so focused on atmosphere. So to be more so even though it was a very short critique, it was something that was done in a context that stuck with me and made me look at every scene after that with a new light. And it just made suddenly my writing just got better because I was thinking about every time I go into the writing, like, what's her goal? Why does she like the why? Why does she want this thing? And how would her desire come out in the writing? In voice, because that's the thing is motivation, like it affects the voice of the character because they start to describe things in certain ways because of the way that because of the reasons they want things. Like if they're angry about it, like if their motivation comes from anger, their voice is angry. And if their motivation comes from joy or hope, then the tone is hopeful. Like it really does change everything about your writing.
So you're adding to not our theory, but just our ongoing love for like emphasizing character when you're developing the plot so that you know who they are, what they want, where they're going. That transformed my writing too once I realized, I need to know these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes through. It's a little bit of a pivot,
Mm-hmm.
but you were a competitive fencer.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about that? And how did that impact your writing, if at all?
Okay, so yeah, I got really into fencing. I did it in college and then stopped doing it, but then I just got back into it when I was living in Atlanta. And I got very obsessive about it and this is the perfectionist in me, and I would work out 5 days a week and like hours at a time to improve and take lessons and like 3 lessons a week and like, go to these tournaments all over the country trying to get into Division 1. And I always thought that getting better at something was a gradual climb that was consistent. You just had effort and you go up and up and up and you just keep going. Eventually, you keep doing something and you do all the things the book tells you to do, your instruction manual, because I'm a rule follower. Eventually, you just get better at it. But what I learned is it's more like up and then you dip and then maybe up a little more and then dip again. And then sometimes you dip way down and then you're like shoot up. And so that there's a kind of, I would say like a little bit of a chaos to improvement that is uncomfortable. Like you can't always predict it. And so the way I used to feel about that I didn't really make the connection with writing for a long time about that, but it used to make me feel just really bad about myself when I would suddenly have a dip and I couldn't write something. And I thought, this scene is terrible. I've been doing this for years. I just wrote the crappiest scene in the world. I must really not be meant to do this. I'm just bad at this. I've been kidding myself. So to me, it was like I mistakenly thought this is an indication that I shouldn't do this anymore. And that was not correct because improving, getting better at something it's not organized. It's really up and down, and especially with writing, which is a really emotional craft. It kind of depends on what's going on. It depends on the story you're writing. What are you pulling from? Lots of things. So you can decrease the dips, I think. You can manage it a little bit by doing good habits, good writing habits. But you can't prevent the dips from happening. You just have to be kind to yourself and go, you know what? This was not a great scene. That's all right. I'll throw it away. I'll do it again tomorrow. And just let it go. Oh, God, it took me forever to learn that. Like, I was really hard on myself.
Okay, what are your writing habits? Like, what is your daily or weekly process? What does and doesn't work for you?
What doesn't work for me is to be perfectionist about it and say, I will write for 2 hours today and I'm going to get X number of words. A lot of people do word count and it's totally valid. For some reason, it doesn't work for me because it sets up an expectation that makes me nervous. Like, and what if I don't get there? So I used to I'd have these perfectionist views of, I'm going to be writing today. It's going to feel really good. I'm going to write this scene and it's going to be amazing and I'm going to move on. And so then the time would come to write and I wasn't feeling it. I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be terrible today. I'm just gonna write a scene and it's gonna be crap, and then I'm gonna feel bad. Okay, I'll just do it later." And so I procrastinate because of my desiring the perfect writing session. It's not gonna always happen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So what I started doing is, and Rosemary Clement did a really cool a session on this at DFW Con about setting achievable small goals. And then when you reach those goals, it really does send some kind of happy chemicals in your brain that says, good job, you can check that off. And you start to associate more positive memories with your task. So I actually have every day, I have to sit down for X number of minutes and write. And it's not a huge goal because even if I'm having a terrible day, I can do 25 minutes. I mean, I can write a bad scene for 25 minutes. All I have to do is turn on my timer and write for 25 minutes. Even if I throw it away, then I can check my box and move on. But what happens is I just have trouble getting started, is the truth.
Yeah.
And once I get started, most of the time, whatever, it just gets better and I'm smoother. Doing it regularly, like every day except for one day off a week. And I got this tip from the Stephen King on writing book, really, really helps. It is better to do every day for 25 minutes than to do 3 hours once a week. And it's like a workout. If you try to do 3 hours of weightlifting on Saturdays only, it's not really going to build you the way. It's not a perfect analogy, but there's something about it. And some people, I guess, can just do that. They can put it down for 2 months and then write for 48 hours straight, and then produce something amazing. But I am not one of these people. So I wake up and I do mornings because I'm a morning person. I make my coffee. I turn on a soundtrack that goes with my project. It always is wordless because words distract me from writing. And the soundtrack helps in make me remember that mental space that I was in. And then I take a pencil and a piece of, and basically one of those actually I have one here. These guys, and I set the timer and write for 25 minutes. And then I set another timer for revision. So writing something fresh is a skill that needs practice. And if you spend months and months and months revising your book and you haven't written anything fresh in a while, you actually start to atrophy a little your skills. So if you can even if you're like, well, I don't know the next part of my book to write. Okay, 25 minutes, write a short story, something unrelated. Practice your skill. That is what I've been doing. And it makes me happier than I used to be with writing. Writing used to produce a lot of anxiety about, am I going to fail? Is this going to be good? Am I never going to write another book in my life? Is this, are the books I've written, that's it, and there's no more? But this habit has really, really helped me. Like, I'm curious what you guys do when you're writing.
We're kind of with you because we're both not, word count kind of stresses us, even though I've been trying to do it a little bit this time. It's more about like an achievable habit and then not beating ourselves up if we're not able to do it as regimented. But getting something down.
I also do the listen to the same soundtrack or same playlist every time because it kind of gets my head in the headspace that like it's writing time. And then 20 minutes a day is better than none. And I used to be like, well, I must write 1,000 words a day, or I must write for an hour a day. And it's just like, that's not how life works for most people. So yeah, if the great Leslie Lutz is doing it, I'm gonna keep doing it too. It works for me.
Well, you're very sweet, the great Leslie Lutz.
I also like your tip that you just said, though, that you write a little bit and then you set a little bit of time to revise.
Yeah, they're different compartments.
Yes, but I also some people are fine just writing a super messy chapter, moving on to the next super messy chapter, but that kind of mentally blocks me. And I'm like, I need at least to be decent before I can move on. So I like that tip. I might try that because I end up doing it anyway, but I shouldn't waste too much time on it. Just give myself a few minutes.
Yeah. I swear I realized I've started to use the techniques I used to use when I taught middle school on my middle schoolers who couldn't complete a big project. They would get overwhelmed. And I'm basically a giant adult middle schooler who needs to break down a big task into smaller chunks. Because I'm serious, I could even, if I wrote those little teacher memos the teachers write about the kids, Like,
Yeah.
Joey has trouble with transitions. That's me. Like Leslie Lutz has trouble with transitions and must, here are some tips to get ready on your writing. So I even have a little, if I have a lot of beta feedback that I've gotten from my beta groups, I don't like reading the beta feedback and I don't like revising with it. Not because it's not good for me, but because it's not fun to hear that something you did didn't entirely work. So I actually set a timer for that too. It's a separate one. It's like beta feedback 25 minutes. And I just like, okay, you're just going to do it 25 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, you can stop. What's great though about this is when I have the whole, hey, write for 25 minutes and stop, the timer goes off and I just keep going half the time. And now 40 minutes has passed, 50 minutes, almost an hour now, because it is really once you're in the groove, if you can harness that, you just keep going. But yeah, I feel like half the time I'm tricking myself into working, which is a weird thing, but I'm all right with that. You have to
Yeah.
be,
I don't hate that.
you don't have to be perfect in order to write. You just work with what you have. You make accommodations for whoever you are and, use whatever techniques work.
Yeah. This is funny that you mentioned being an English teacher because our next question is, as a former teacher, an editor by trade, and honestly, truthfully, one of the best beta readers around. What
Thank
do you
you.
think makes someone a good critiquer?
What are you listening for whenever you hear
Sure.
something?
What makes a good like, what do I do when I'm critiquing? So, one of the things I do know is really important is that you have to yes, you have to tell them what's not working, but you have to tell them what is working because you want them to do more of it. And you have to kind of care for the emotional life of the person you're critiquing a little bit because you can break down somebody to the point that they can't really write anymore. I mean, if somebody has enough negativity in their family, their life, then the critique group, and everything is you're terrible, it can really hamper their ability to revise. And so, making sure that, especially if been a bad night for them and they've gotten a lot of negative feedback, throwing them, like, and not lying about it, saying this was cool. I really like this element. It's almost like a life ring for them. They can hang on to it and go, this is what's working. I'm going to hang on to this. All right, now I'm going to take these other things one by one. But if they've heard nothing good, it's almost impossible to revise it because you just want to throw the whole thing out. As I've been critiquing longer and longer, some of my sharper edges have been worn off just also by
Mm.
being critiqued. And I think there was a time in my life I was a little more snobby about people's writing. I think there were times when, just to be quite honest, I think sometimes I was like, oh, this is terrible. My goodness, that's so shallow. I don't like it. Sometimes it really hurts them when you realize, oh my gosh, I just wrote something that somebody else feels that way about. But over time, I think what happened is I'll read something and I'll hear like, okay, this is not working. And actually, I'm pretty sure this is going to come across as a little ridiculous to the audience. And I can tell the writer doesn't know that. But I'm not, I'm more looking at it as like a physician who's trying to figure out how to fix a problem rather than somebody who's like, oh, can you believe this person's a terrible writer? Like, removing judgment from it, if like, it really helps just give them the tools they need to make it better. And I do believe in a growth mentality. I believe not the fixed mentality. You're not born with a certain amount of talent for being a writer. It's basically a weird kind of like intellectual aristocracy that we have bought into for a long time where we think, oh, yeah, people are born to be the Duke. They're born, they have good breeding, right? And it actually wormed its way into crafts and art and writing. But all of us have the ability to change and grow and become better at our writing. And it's not like you're just born with talent and then you have it. No, you create yourself and your talent as you go. And so therefore, if I'm looking at this piece and I'm like, what can this person become? Like, I don't know. It's just like it helps to like really believe that they can do it as you're picking out the things that could improve for them. And there are times when the piece is so bad, you do know. No, no, you can just in your head like, yeah, this is bad. This is not gonna work. And you could tell this is not going to be the novel that they're going to publish. Like this is going to be something they're going to be practicing on. They're going to finish it. It's going nowhere. But they're going to learn something from this. And the next novel might be the one.
Okay, I have a follow-up question then, because I think we've all experienced that like with ourselves and other like little reads we hear where we're like, this is not the thing. Do you believe in telling someone that you think it's not the thing, or do you think we all have to discover that ourselves.
Like to tell them, by the way, this is not your novel. This is not the one that's going to be published.
Yeah, or like, I think you
Oh.
need to start a new project, because I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say that, but then a lot of times someone will start something new and we're like, yeah, this is what you needed to be doing.
Right.
And thank God we don't put it like that, but there's kind of an undertone of like, and
Yeah.
it's a good thing you moved on from that project. But again, I've never heard someone say it. So what do you think?
Well, and there are different levels. So there's sometimes that somebody has written something that is competent, but not competitive. Like it's like, this is competent writing, but you're going to be up against, the agents only take 14 new clients a year, and you're competing against all these other people who are also competent. So this one's not going to be the one. There's that. And then there's this novel is a hot mess and is not competent. Sometimes the novel is like my first book. The structure was terrible. Great descriptions of setting, but the structure was bad. Do you tell them? I think it depends on where they are in the journey. Like if they're just starting out and they're only a couple of chapters into their project, I don't think I would. I think they need to write the novel. I think they need to finish it, and they need to have energy to finish it. And yeah, they're going to be harboring this, like maybe this is going to be famous, and I'm going to get an agent with this. And they're not, because you're 95% sure this is not the one, but they need the practice.
Okay.
So I would say don't.
I have another follow-up question now to the
I want to know
because
I want to know if it's the same question I have. Go.
Okay. Well, I had a similar conversation about this one time with Katie Burnett, who has been on a previous episode and been very open about how she, wrote 5 manuscripts before she got the one. And so I asked her, like, did you have a different gut feeling when you wrote the book that became the one versus the ones before? Or with every book were you like, this is going to get me an agent, or this is going to get me published? And she said that the gut feeling was different, where she knew by the time she got to this one, like, this is different in a good way. So did you have a gut feeling with the book that got you agented / your first book deal? Like, I can tell that I don't want to say like reached a new echelon, but you're like, I've leveled up in a way where like, I know that I've done something different and better than before.
Not entirely. No. I mean, I don't think that I had that. It was more, and I think it's because maybe I'm more blind than other people. I'm not sure about my own work, but as I was writing my first manuscript, I was fantasizing about how it's going to be on the shelf, and it's great. And when I reread my own work, I'm like, this is pretty good, because I'm reading it with these the special glasses on. I wrote this is my baby. And then the second one, I'm like, yeah, that's a really cool scene. But I would say that there were times that I would have an unease about a portion of the book. And I'm like, I don't know, something is wrong, and I don't know what it is, and it's very uneasy about it. But I'll be honest, I had that about Fractured Tide too. It's like, oh, this isn't working. But then what was different, though, I guess, in the end with Fractured Tide, is that I had gained the confidence to throw away entire chunks of the novel and start over. I had never done that before. And so, for example, I wrote 100 pages of that book. I realized it was going in the wrong direction. I threw it away. I didn't reuse any of it. 100 pages, and just started over. And then for the ending, I wrote an ending, and I went to DFW Writers Workshop, to the conference, and I sat in a session where I got a great new wow idea for the ending, threw away the ending and rewrote it. So I do think I developed a better sense of recognizing I'm uneasy about this section, and there's probably a reason. Okay, delete it, start over. And so, but I wouldn't say I had a lot of confidence, just because I'm not that confident about my writing in general. Like I really rely very heavily on beta readers to help me see clearly.
But it's good, because while that might not have been different, your gut feeling towards the book was a little, because you were having fun writing it, which then
yeah, and I like
that.
And I think too, like I'm working on a very difficult project at the moment that I've been working on longer than I worked on Fractured Tide, longer than I worked on Sweetest Darkness, and I've had to rewrite it a lot. It's been harder, and some people say that sometimes the third book is harder. I don't know if that's the case, but feeling more lost about what needs to be cut and what needs to be rewritten. And that gut instinct, it has been helping me, but it does feel like I need to cut it, but what do I do? And then hating the project and like, can I just start a new book? I don't like it.
But you've got to finish, and that's one of the things that you encouraged me to do when I was ready to drop all of it, because
Mm,
I think getting to that point where you realize a lot is wrong and that you have to rewrite something is a very hard hill to
it's
get over.
very
That's one
hard.
of those dips that you're talking about, and it's the deepest one, I think, is the first time you
Yes.
realize, like, "Shit,
That's a
this
writing
is
despair is what that
so
is.
much work." Oh, I
Yes.
remember my question too. So I was gonna say, the people who have written the whole book though, and that keep going back to it and keep going back to it, are those the people that you're able to confidently say, "You have to stop and write something new"? Like, I feel
Yes.
like that's different than the person who's like, because I think I have a theory, tell me what you think, that we all need a first book to throw away, at least one, at least. I think that very, very rarely is the first book somebody's book. And I'm seeing this happen just with my friends, with workshop. I think you have to have at least one. But I have seen people who continually work on
And
the
just the
one book,
first one.
and you're like,
So,
"You're so much better." Like,
yeah.
and then they find themselves their ending is better than the beginning because they were better, but then they rewrite the beginning and now the beginning is better because they were stronger writers now than they were. But they're taking 5 years to write one
Mhm.
book. And
Yeah.
I think
Actually,
that are those the people who get the slap on the wrist? Stop.
well, this is so it kind of reminds me, you asked earlier about what was one of the most valuable piece of advice that you got at workshop, and I forgot about this. This isn't a craft thing. This is more of a emotional management and planning advice. Is I was working on my spy novel, which is the first book that I brought there, and I got some really great advice from a lot of people, and I found that I was getting better and better and better as I wrote, just like you said. But I had written the whole book and before I even got there, but my revisions were really improving. And I was talking to Alex Ailey Martinez, who gives really great advice. And I said, yeah, I was thinking I was going to go back and rewrite the whole thing and just start over with critique. And he goes, no, write something new. And I remember kind of being taken aback, like, well, but this is the one I'm working on. I got to finish it, right? Like this desire to finish something and that has to be perfect. It's actually a form of
Mm,
perfectionism, I think, is that I must
mhm.
finish this and it must be great and it must be the one that's published. He says, no, you just keep writing. He's like, you finish something, keep writing. You can go back and revise if you want the other one, but you
Mm.
always need to be writing something new. And that was incredibly good advice. And so that even if you end up publishing that earlier manuscript, you're still writing something new. And I'm doing that now. I've revised the Woods book. I'm working on it right now, but because I got mired, it started to become this thing that made me depressed as a writer. So I started a new book at the same time. I'm writing a spy novel for young people, and it's energizing me and it's fun and I love it. And so, I'm not just I feel like I was just going around like a dog chasing its tail regarding that other manuscripts. So, but is it, people who go back and just keep revising the same thing? Yes, it is this is the very important book that it's like an obsession almost for some people. And that was what it was for me with the first manuscript a long time ago. That had to be the one. And yeah, the people who get really stuck on that and like, no, I have to do this and I'm gonna do it for 5 years, or they already wrote the whole thing. They have 700,000 words in a 5 book series. I always feel
Ugh.
bad for them because it's too hard to let go of it to move on because they
Mm.
feel like
It becomes like a security blanket.
it's like a bad marriage, like,
Um,
you've already invested 10 years in it, right? Like,
Yes,
"What am I
the
gonna
sunken
do?
cost fallacy. You're like, I spent so much time on it.
I
Like,
have to do it. I can't leave him."
yes, you have to. She's like, not speaking from personal experience or
No,
anything.
no, no.
Gosh,
So,
yes,
yeah.
you have to be. We've started doing this. I've started doing this where like I'm querying an old thing and it was really scary to start a new thing because I'm like, well, how can I start again? Like by the time you finish something, you forget what it's like to start a new thing.
Yeah.
And then I just sat down and ripped the band-aid off and made myself start a new
Start
chapter.
a
And
new
I don't know
thing.
where it's going, but at least I'm doing a new thing while
Yes,
I'm querying because I'm like, sure, there's tweaks I could be making to this thing I'm querying while I wait for responses, but that would not be building my writing muscles in the same way as starting
for
something
sure.
else. And then it just takes all the sunken cost thing away where you're like all of a sudden I'm way less enchanted with the book I wrote before because I'm like,
Right.
well, if it doesn't get me an agent or doesn't ever sell, like I'm writing something else that I'm excited about too. So
There's
Yeah.
actually it goes into that habit thing of writing something new often, is when you're not writing something new and just revising the old thing for 5 years, because that's often that's what I was doing for a long time with my first literary novel. I wasn't actually writing, I was revising or tweaking or just line editing. And what happens is writing becomes very precious. It's like this, oh, this chapter is very precious because it's scarcer. There's not as much of it, right? But if you're writing something new every day, you're more comfortable throwing away the stuff. You can't publish all of it. You're writing every day. That's a ton of
Yeah.
words. So you're only going to publish, the top 40% or the top 30% of it. And suddenly you're looking at a chapter like, yeah, I can cut this. And you have to
Mhm.
be able to you have to be able to say, I'm going to cut 50 pages. And you can't do
It's
that if you're so
so
like
freeing.
preciously,
Yeah.
this is my precious novel I've worked on for 5 years. I couldn't cut a,
Well,
a thing out of my first novel. It all stayed in.
I also think agents, like, I remember when I got my email from Nadia, I remember sending it to you, Leslie, and to Katie and being like, what is she saying? Is this a revise and resubmit? Like, what is she saying? And when I got on the phone, I immediately was like, oh, this is an offer. She wants to know if I'm willing to be unprecious, if I'm willing to say, yes, I can make edits. I can be a
Mhm.
reasonable human being and change things. I don't think that I think that not that they want you to be confident in your work, but, like, an editor's going to expect edits. Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be so, like, when you're so precious with it that you're like, "Nope, nothing can change," it's like, well, how are we gonna improve this if it's already perfect? And most likely it's not, and that's not achievable, so stop trying to work towards
Mhm.
perfection. But I think you just become such a better writer when you're able to write a scene for your friends and go, "Hey, read this. What do you think?" And they're like, "Oh my god, this is great. I don't think this makes sense. What about this?" And you're able to go, "Huh, genius,
Mhm.
chuck it."
Check it.
You rewrite
Do
it
it
the next
again.
day and you're like, "I did it. This is
Yeah.
great. This was what they were saying and it was the right thing." And it's just so freeing to not waste
Not
time
waste time and just to do
just
it decisively. It goes back to me for it really does go back to I think more and more, I think we are a collection of habits as people. There are, these little habits we have every day and like you can really change your whole perspective on something just by changing your habit in a small way. And
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
very interesting to me. And it's also changing your habits is something controllable. Where
Yeah.
being able to produce something amazing every day is not controlled. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But I can sit down and press a button that says start timer. And I can hold my pencil and I can start writing and like, yay, I've done the habit. So have
Mhm.
the controllable nature of habits makes it an easier thing and like a foundation that helps me in a lot of
Yeah.
other ways that I never expected. Like I'm more able to cut because I know I got all this writing
Mhm.
that I couldn't possibly publish all of it.
And that's why finding a writing buddy or writing community is so important because I think for me, even more than all the stuff I've learned at workshop, the most important thing I've got out of it is the accountability. Because when I came, I wasn't really actively working on something. It was like I used to write and I loved it, but I don't know how to get back into it, but I
Mhm.
want to. And then when you come to this place every week, one, it becomes like embarrassing if you're not working on anything and all these
Mhm.
other people are, or at least embarrassing to me. Because
Yeah,
then
me
people are like,
too.
what are you working on? What are you working on? I'm like,
Well, I
oh,
don't have
nothing. I'm
anything.
just sitting on my butt, twiddling my thumbs, hoping inspiration will strike. Yeah, so there's almost like a positive peer pressure where I'm just like, by proxy of hanging out with people who are doing it, then I'm gonna do it. So
Mhm.
it's
Oh, I
the
think,
other
like,
like habit thing.
community habits, sure, like, when you have somebody to and it's not and I think what's great is it's not impress. It's not like having a group of people to impress. It's like, "No, all of my people are showing up on this day to collaborate and to discuss, and, like, I'm not gonna be left out of this because I want to." And it's not necessarily a comparative thing either, but it's like, no, like, there's a motivation to, like,
Yeah.
produce because you want to collectively like, I don't know, like,
And you want to
you
collectively
wanna
get better. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
they're getting better because they're doing it. And I don't want to get left behind. Like, honestly, FOMO and peer pressure have been great motivators for
Yes,
me
yes.
because I'm
Well,
like, I want to keep up.
and I think that, all of us as writers, let's be honest, we all want people to like our work. I mean, we're all if narcissism is a spectrum, Like, we're all just slightly edging to the middle of it where we're like, "Yes, please put my thoughts on a shelf and everyone love me." There's some of that because that's a healthy thing, I think, to a degree, as long as it doesn't go too far. But one thing it does create when I would go to workshop is this fear that someone wasn't gonna like my writing and therefore wouldn't like me. Like, and deep down, I think that's why I was conflating the two things. And there's a comedian I adore, Patton Oswalt, who he was the voice of Ratatouille, and he's hilarious. And he also has some mental health difficulties that he's open about because he has depression, and sometimes he'd be affected by his material would fall flat, and he was always afraid. And he says I'm grateful for the jokes that land, but he says I'm also really grateful for the ones that fell flat because the next morning the sun rose and I still had breakfast and the day still the world didn't collapse. I thought it was going to collapse, but no one laughed, and I went on and it was okay. And I'm grateful for those moments because they've taught me that kind of perspective. And that's kind of what I learned as well, is that I would sometimes go to workshop and I would read the worst scene. I thought it was amazing because I have very poor gut feelings about my work. I'm like, this is great. People are going to love it. And they're like, man, Leslie, this one's bad. And we'd still go out afterwards to IHOP and have pancakes or go have tacos. Nobody cared. Nobody was like, oh, well, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. You suck. They were like, oh, yeah, you wrote a bad scene. Okay, let's go have pancakes. And there was a sense of acceptance in the community that this is a process and it's imperfect. And so are you. And that's okay.
We couldn't have written a better finisher there. I mean, hello. Okay, so the way that we end our little fun is that we have a little rapid fire wrap up. And our rapid fire is not like, you don't have to give just a one word answer. You can give a little explanation, but we're just going to have a few little questions and we're going to all answer them. And yeah, it's great fun, right?
Okay.
Great fun.
Great fun. Okay, so our first rapid fire question: what podcast are you currently listening to and loving?
The Guardian has a podcast on what's happening in British Parliament. And I'm geeking out on British politics for some reason. And because it's just like a soap opera.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
that sounds fun.
My first thought was boring, but no, you're right.
No, I'm here for it.
It's a little bit, but well, it can be, but
dry.
It's when you've got the vicious jockeying for prime minister going on, and there's a bunch of stuff coming up in the Epstein files that's implicating people, and it has become a very exciting time in British politics. So I have been listening to that, and then drinking my tea. Like drink my little
And this
tea.
is called what again?
It's the Guardian newspaper has a little podcast that they do.
I sense this becoming my next obsession. Thank you
so
so
what
much.
about what are you guys listening to?
Yeah, Caroline, yours?
My current fave that I always come back to is Sounds Like a Cult. It is hosted by a very smart author lady. She wrote Word Slut and a couple of other books I love. But I was just looking at some of the funny episode titles. It'll do like The Cult of Chick-fil-A, The Cult of Marching Band, The Cult of Beyonce. And so it's just exploring like modern day cults.
Like obsessions.
Yes. And sometimes it's more serious where it's like it actually is a cult. And then a lot of times it's silly and funny. But at the end of every episode, her and her guests will rate like, do we need to GTFO this cult? Or is this just like a funny, silly whatever? So I do love that one. Very entertaining.
Okay. Mine, you guys, I'm gonna, maybe I need to try some new things, but I'm really into a good chat with Amy. I love Amy Poehler, and her guests always seem so comfortable with her that I love hearing these people being interviewed. But also my all-time favorite, nothing beats it for me, is Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. And it is so hilarious. Sonam Obsessian is his longtime assistant. She wrote a book. It's actually very funny. He is so insane and so funny, and the people around him are so unaffected by him that it is hilarious. So his guests, again, super comfortable, but just great stories and just really funny. So yeah.
Love it. Okay, next question. What's the last TV show you binged, Leslie?
We are rebinging West Wing right now. Again, I'm totally in a political thing right now.
Yeah, you are.
So yeah, we just watched the season to episode 1, which is amazing. And it's a great show also for studying how effective dialogue creates momentum, but they have incredible dialogue. And it also right now, there's a bit of political nostalgia for, since our country has become a flaming dumpster full of monkeys throwing flaming bags of poop. It's really fun to watch, like, competent people. Sorry, I got political
Well,
there.
like the throwback to like respectful politics.
Yeah, well, like people thought things that were logical and used science. What are you guys binging?
Kayla and I just finished really good miniseries. I love a miniseries on Amazon Prime called All Her Fault. It's got Dakota Fanning and I think her name is Sarah Snook.
Yes.
It's, what would you call it?
She's like a mom. It's a mom and there's like some yes.
It's kind of, it reminded me of a Leanne Moriarty, like a Big Little Lies, but I would say a little darker. So good thriller mystery where multiple storylines interweave. Highly recommend.
I am watching West Wing for the first time right now, Leslie, but I'm not binging it because Bo and I are watching it together, which means it has been a very slow watch. But Aaron Sorkin, dialogue, quick-witted dialogue, it is epic. But of course, I watched Bridgerton season 4, and you know what?
Oh, I haven't watched it yet.
I liked it. It's very Ever After-y, which is like, as a child, was my pinnacle. Love Ever After. Drew Barrymore, like, oh my God, it was, so I enjoyed it. It's not as good as season 2, but it was really fun. And then I also watched His and Hers, which is based on a book. It's on Netflix. It's just a limited series with Joe Barenthal and Tessa Thompson. Tessa Thompson, is that her name? It is so good, so demented, but so good. So yes, lots of TV for me, always.
Well, you guys are awesome. Yeah. This is really fun. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Thank you so much for listening to Witches of Workshop. Be sure to find us every Wednesday on your favorite podcast platform.
And remember, if you want to be featured on Witches of Workshop, please send 1 to 10 pages and a synopsis to witchesofworkshop@gmail.com.
Until then, happy writing.